I just see me.
Can you see me now?
Yeah.
So in MULAKA you play as a spirit-wielding warrior with a spirit spear. Is this one going to hit the mark, or is it going to miss? Fail horribly. Ooh. I think I might have wrecked your bike.
First things first, Glenn and I want to say a massive thank you to the developers, one for providing this review copy, but secondly for making such a great game. In MULAKA, you dive into the northern Mexico's breathtaking landscapes with a 3D action-adventure game based on the rich indigenous culture of the Taramara people. You embark on the journey of a Sukurúame, a Taramara shaman, as you fight back against the foulness corrupting the land, while drawing upon the powers of demigods. It sounds so cliche, I know, but bear with me. As you progress through the game, the story is delivered in beautifully drawn animated stills. Characters also add to the story and deliver unvoiced dialogue, which is well written and often comical. If ever a game was Nintendo without actually being Nintendo, it's MULAKA. The story is quite typical in one sense, overcome an evil force to save the world, but its uniqueness is in the delivery of an actual cultural tale, the identities and mythologies of which flow through the game like its lifeblood. So many games try to make you care about the characters with nonsensical fictions. The historical accuracies here add a sense of depth to the story you don't normally get. As the game progresses, the story gets deeper and the characters involved are fleshed out. You meet humans and demigods and travel through real-life places beautifully recreated in a minimalist but colourful way. I give story 19 out of 20. I was totally sold on this one. It took a tired concept and injected it with real stories and beliefs, which for me was just magical. Some may complain that the actual character you play remains mostly silent throughout his adventure, but for me I felt like I was taking on his role, so his silence was less angsty teenage annoying and more stoic hero awesome. It's hard to show this in a review, but the game has a profound sense of speed and style, from the flailing headband blowing in the breeze to the huge vertical leaps your character can perform as he blasts through his environment. You won't find a stamina bar in sight, which was liberating. Being able to unhindered launch through your environment, sailing into the air with the press of a button carries a sense of speed and control I haven't seen in a game since the first Sonics. In his hand, your character has a spear. This can be used as a melee weapon with either light, fast, or heavy, slow attacks. These can be chained together in several ways to unleash devastating combos. The melee attack can be combined with running and jumping for slam and charge attacks, as well as the welcome spear throwing mechanic, which sees the motion controls used in much the same way as they were with Breath of the Wild. Each area sees you finding 3 gems to unlock the next section. I know that might sound lame, but the puzzling here is sensible, exciting and challenging. There are some classic moments, like the crazy bird you must catch and stomp, who then gives you the information you need to progress. They just don't really make them like this anymore. I know that's a cliched thing to say, but really this feels like an old school Nintendo game. At several times in the game you enter a kind of pop-up arena where the sides become barred and you must kill 2 or 3 rounds of enemies before you can continue. I was worried that this was going to become tedious, but thankfully these are very challenging and require you to use all your skills to conquer them. Add to this the fact that you are treated with new and interesting enemies on a regular basis, and an ever-filling special bar which allows you to suddenly unleash hell with the press of 2 buttons. Through this, things are kept really engaging. As you reach the end of a stage, so comes the inevitable boss fights. I wasn't expecting what met me at the end of stage 1. What I did find was a well thought out and most importantly difficult boss fight. It really reminded me of Monster Hunter, knocking out its legs and forcing it to run into walls to get the sneak attack on its back was great fun. As the levels progress, the challenge really does ramp up. You can, thankfully, harvest to make potions. This is all handled automatically, you just need to get the right herbs. When you take a potion, there is a delay, again a la Monster Hunter, so you must be careful in combat not to take it when being charged or when you're cornered. Really good stuff indeed, and again, I was totally surprised by this. Gameplay for me gets 18 out of 20. Arena fights can get a tiny bit repetitive, but the combat is fast, responsive and fun. The puzzles are simplistic but sensible, and the boss fights are pure gaming gold. Music is top notch in MULAKA. Check out this music from the main theme song. It is both authentic and easy to listen to, and as the stages progress it changes perfectly to fit each environment. My only real criticism here would be that by default it can be a little deafening. I turned it down a few notches in the options and all was well. Sound is often so overlooked. In our most recent review of Hollow, I commented how the sound was poor because you could not hear the directions of enemies. MULAKA has some of the best directional sound I've ever heard. I was so surprised by this, as it just doesn't seem like something that most people would even think about. I could hear the exact direction, distance and location of an enemy, which when you need to quickly dodge, allows for some sweet looking action moments as you anticipate the charge of a rhino looking creature and backflip over its head based on sound alone. Environmental sounds are handled equally well, from the sound of the wind blowing as you sprint around to the waterfalls crashing in an echoing cavern. I can't quite get my head around this being an indie game. There really are only a few areas where you might think a small team worked on this. Voices in cutscenes are a tiny little bit janky, sounding like someone shoved a harmonica somewhere they shouldn't have and then did the can-can. However, even these sound intentionally strange and mysterious. I can be so harsh on games like this, but I can't really find fault with the sound here. HD rumble has been seen to be poor in some other games, even overused or underused. Here it is used sparingly. I wouldn't say it was as accomplished as, say, Celeste, which is my current top dog for HD rumble, but it's well implemented and sensible. When you unleash a devastating finishing move, the HD rumble there is really satisfying. Sound for me gets an overall score of 18 out of 20. Everything is here you would want in an action-adventure game and more. This puts large 100-person development teams to shame. MULAKA is responsive. From combat, which is both fast but also nuanced in the same way as Dark Souls, with a dodge button allowing you to quickly and gracefully sidestep to deliver devastating counterattacks, to the later game abilities to transform into creatures which have their own useful combat abilities. Running as fast, and when you jump you know you will land where you want, because there is a good deal of aerial control. Later in the game, there are some precise platforming moments which feel great when you know you can actually control where the character is going to land with some degree of accuracy. The button layout is sensible. The trigger buttons control your spirit vision and your spear throwing. The throw of the spear is aimed with motion controls, and the spirit vision allows you to see into the spirit world, which helpfully shows you enemy HP. There are so many intricate details like this, which make the controls both sensible and useful. That same spirit vision also points to the next objective and highlights useful areas and distances. You never need to break up the pace by glancing dumbfounded at a terrible map. Hollow. Without spoiling too much, the controls are added to as the game progresses, in the best possible way. Just when you start to get complacent, a new skill is added, or the ability to shapeshift entirely and soar gracefully through the air. It was just a joy to control. My only wish would have been for a lock-on mechanic, but perhaps its lack was intentional to increase the challenge. Either way, it was one thing I missed. Controls for me get 18 out of 20. They were quick, responsive, accurate, and only missed a lock-on mechanic for enemies. Finally, we look at graphics. I'm sure you've probably made up your own mind on those from the footage thus far. On Switch in handheld mode, they look crisp and clear, but do suffer from a strange frame rate. This would dip below 30 occasionally. In a game this fast and fluid, the 60 frames per second of the other consoles will be missed. But for the most part, the game maintains a constant frame rate even when below the desired levels. The image is crisp and to my eyes didn't dynamically scale, which I hate. I would rather lose a few frames and not have to go to spec savers after a few hours. The colour palette starts out quite muted, but do not fear. As you leave the first land, things get a huge bucket of colour dropped onto them. The game is reminiscent of Rhyme, but not having played through that, I will have to leave that judgment to you. I found the graphics a mixed bag. In some areas they look lovely, bright and inviting, whereas in others they can get a touch repetitive and dull. The game has an aesthetic that may be divisive, but I enjoyed it and found it had little in the way of visual distractions to the action. Character animations look great. A favourite is the old man with his skinny legs knocking together as he talks, or the crazy bird sprinting off every time you come close. There are a lot of technically nice elements at play on character animation as well. The headband moves and reacts with a clever physical rendering technique like those seen with hair effects in games like Tomb Raider. This really adds to the sense of speed when launching around an environment, and as you screech to a halt and the tails of your headband react accordingly by tangling around your character, you can't help but be impressed. Graphics for me get 17 out of 20. For me, the graphics here are unique but also well crafted. You may mistake intentional for being poor. When it comes to some of the character design, the pointy limbs and some of the animations are a little clunky, but always seem intentional. My only wish here would be for 60 frames per second, but we will save that for Switch 2.0. I can't speak for total lengths, as I've played for about 4 hours and I'm not even halfway through the game. Each area gives you percentage completion scores, and there are various hidden secrets, some of which you cannot reach until you have the prerequisite skills later in the game, so returning to 100% is rewarding and interesting. I'm sure you can tell from the tone of this review, MULAKA was just a surprise and a delight for me. At the price of $15.99 in the UK, you would literally be mad not to get this. This is Switch Up Gold, and as such gets a combined score of 90%. I absolutely loved it. The history and the atmosphere, this is an essential pickup, and at this price deserves everyone's attention. There is a reason this is already in the top 15 of the Switch charts before release. All I can say is wow. Normally I would say are you, today I'm saying when are you going to pick this one up? Let me know down below, and as always, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see you on the next one.